Hi everyone, it's Nick. Welcome or welcome back to my channel. Okay, in today's video, we are going to be talking about the most regretted interior design upgrades you could do for your home. These are the things that I see that people do in their home that they upgrade for their renovation. And they are well-intentioned, maybe even useful in the moment, but they end up regretting them later. And I think it's important to know because if you're thinking about doing these upgrades in your own home, think twice for the reasons I'm going to describe in this video before actually spending lots and lots of money on it. And if you already have these in your home and you love them, then of course ignore this video. But those rules still apply as with all of my videos. Let's get going. Okay, first on my list is going to be concrete countertops. There is no shortage of people here on YouTube that talk about their home renovations and they're always like, I did my home kitchen renovation. Let me talk about what I regret. And like all the time, people seem to talk about concrete countertops. And there's a reason. I think people love the idea of these and that's great. I love that people are creative in terms of what they can do and they look really beautiful, I think. And people just kind of get in their head that they're like, I want these damn concrete countertops. You know, people just love the look of them because, you know, they're a little bit different than marble or quartz like they've seen before. And they look really solid, but they kind of maybe blend in with sort of a Japandi space, or they kind of maybe could almost feel like really rustic, like farmhouse. And so people like to kind of bring them into different design styles. And I think that on the surface, they seem like a really great idea. They're regretted because oftentimes these are DIY'd. And if they're DIY'd, then they're regretted because they're done poorly. And there's all sorts of different like rough edges or sort of misalignment kind of issues because, you know, it's really important. Countertops are serious business, okay? So there's a reason why you hire fabricators to do your countertops because it's really important that you get it right. Tiny little millimeters matter when it comes to doing your kitchen countertops. And so I think it's really important to make sure that you're bringing a professional for them rather than DIY, which is getting on your little trowel of concrete there and just going to town, right? So concrete countertops are regretted because they're DIY'd and poorly. And also, even if you get them professionally installed, first of all, they weigh a ton. So like good luck for like ever getting those things out. And they're just like, again, how they're done and constructed is different than how if you were to get a stone slab or a quartz or something, which is also really heavy. But with concrete countertops, they are like never coming out of there. Okay, like they are just not, they are not, especially if you're DIYing, which so many of them are. Once you make a mistake, it's very, very difficult to change. So they're very finicky and very frustrating for that reason. They're also incredibly porous and they can stain and have all sorts of problems. Concrete, I think oftentimes when people look at concrete flooring, concrete countertops, whatever, they're more challenging material, I think, than people first think when they look at them. Rather than something like engineered hardwood or a luxury vinyl plank or laminate, or in the case of countertops, quartz or natural stone or butcher block or laminate or any of these other options that you kind of have there. The challenge here is that they are really difficult to work with and it's much more porous because it's not usually meant to be a countertop. Now, I will say this, if you do love this look and you're like, no, I insist on doing it, but I also like, now I'm thinking twice, what do I do? Personally, I think probably the best way to move forward with this is rather than doing concrete countertops, go with a quartz product. There are different brands that are out there that have quartz countertops, which again, quartz is a man-made material, but it is like it's bunched up sort of different stones and stuff that's then mixed with a resin and some coloring to create sort of the look of a marble or whatever sort of natural stone you're trying to mimic. But they also have ones that mimic concrete as well. So I think those are a much better option for you rather than going in and DIYing or even getting professionally installed concrete countertops because 9 times out of 10, you're gonna live to regret them. Okay, next up on my list is gonna be a backyard kitchen. I don't really like backyard kitchens, but that's oftentimes because if it's my personal preference, I like to have the kitchen on the ground floor right away so that you can actually use your kitchen when operating outdoors. That's like the ideal setup as far as I'm concerned, but oftentimes on a split level, you'll have the kitchen on the upper floor and then people have to walk down in order to be able to get into the backyard. So what do, especially when houses are really, really huge, is they will install a giant backyard kitchen or an outdoor kitchen where they will have, you know, the barbecue, which is fair enough, right? People love a barbecue, smoker, okay, it's a bit niche, but I can get behind it. But then people start to go crazy and they start to do the ice machines and they start doing refrigeration out there and they start doing sinks out there and they do beer taps out there and they really start kind of going a little bit crazy with the options of how to create the outdoor kitchen. And again, with all these little tools, then requires additional plumbing, requires electrical, requires countertop space, right? So they're generously sized, I would say, in people's backyards. And people oftentimes live to regret these because they don't get as much use out of them as they think. And depending on your climate, so if you're in a warmer climate, like if you're living in, I don't know, if you're living in San Diego or something, then maybe you can use this a lot more. But if you're in a northern climate like me, where you're in Vancouver, you're probably realistically going to be using this for 4 to 6 months. Now, Canadians love to barbecue even when it snows. I'm going to be honest with you, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the full outdoor kitchen is going to get as much use as you think it will. So this is a little bit climate dependent, but especially in a northern climate where you are, using it for maybe half a year, if we're being really generous, then you're probably not going to get the use out of these, and they are so expensive. They're also oftentimes a lot of maintenance, and therefore can be really frustrating to have to keep up, right? Like, yes, you can cover them and whatever, but especially, for that half a year that you're not using them, you might find them really annoying to have to deal with. Now, if you're closer to the equator, then maybe you'll get a lot more use out of the outdoor kitchen. But for the most part, people oftentimes regret these because they are so expensive, so much maintenance, so much upkeep, and probably not getting the use that they think they will. Okay, next up, home renovation upgrade that people regret is gonna have to be garage conversions. My sister did this one, so that's why I made the list. Sorry, Julia. Called you out yet again, not just for your Olaf blow-ups like I normally make fun of you for when it comes to your Christmas decorations. Here's the thing with garage conversions. I understand what you're trying to do, okay? I get it. You've got you're like, what do? I want to expand the house. I want to get more rooms. I want to get like an office. I want to get a little rec room for the kids. Like I want to get whatever. And you've run out of space. And you're like, well, what am I gonna do? You can't, you can do an extension or something, an addition, whatever you want to call it. But those can be all so really expensive and also really challenging to do. So what are you going to do? And then you look and you see this garage and you're like, hey, there's all this space out here that's just doing nothing. Why not convert it into something else? And how genius is that? No one's ever thought of this. And I can go and take that space, reclaim it, put in a den, put in whatever, and I'm good to go. The reason people regret these is that, well, really two main reasons. One is that the garage oftentimes, it's a lot not as easy as you think, because the garage is oftentimes not insulated and it's not meant to be a den necessarily. And so there might be a little bit more work depending on your situation to actually upgrade these and convert these into actual living space. So turning it into a guest suite or a den or something seems great in theory, but you actually get down to it, it can be really challenging to do them. And in addition to that, people find that the garage is actually kind of useful. And there's a reason people like them. And they like to put their cars there and their toys and their things that they're gonna need. And by missing that space, you never know, as your family grows, as it changes in time, people tend to accumulate stuff. You need a place to put it. And the garage, without the conversion part, is actually a really valuable space. Plus, when you go to sell your house, this is when it starts to get challenging, because yes, you might have wanted the guest suite for when your like Italian mother-in-law comes in or whatever, and father-in-law, and they come in like once a year for 2 weeks, and you're like, God, would it be great for them to have their own little guest suite? Why don't we convert the garage? Great that you did that, but that's your story. And if you go to sell the house later on down the road, that is probably, it might not be the story of the next person that wants to buy your home. Now, listen, I generally don't think that you should just build for resale. You have to kind of be careful with your timeline. Like, do you plan on living in this house for 2 to 5 years? Or do you plan on living in this house for the rest of your life? That changes the story in terms of what you choose to do. We're gonna get to more resale conversations later in this video, but I do still think that, life's funny and you never really know. Life's gonna toss you a curveball. And so yes, you might think you know what's gonna happen in your world for the next 20 years. Trust me, I know based on my last few years of my life, it tosses you some curveballs. And so, you might have to go and explain to the realtor or the future buyer why they don't get a garage. And instead they're gonna have to kind of decommission this sort of guest suite for themselves when they go to buy your place. So it will limit the pool of buyers for your home. And it's a lot more work than you think, and therefore more expense. And garages are useful. And for that reason, people kind of regret these. Next up is going to be kitchen islands with seating. I see lots of beautiful photos with people that are taking their kitchen island, and it makes sense. They have dreams of people, like kids doing their homework, sitting at the kitchen island while they're cooking. Everybody wants to have that little fantasy, and we love living in the fantasy, but let's also live in reality, which is that sometimes these are really annoying to sit at, and therefore these spaces, this like seating, doesn't actually get used all that much. Do you know what I mean? Like, oftentimes what you're going to do is you're either going to be cutting into your kitchen island, which is limiting your storage that you're looking at in the island in order to kind of do that where you've got the knee space, the leg room for that seating. Or more often what you're going to be seeing is you're going to extend that kitchen island countertop out a little bit, right? So it's like kind of cantilevered over top to provide enough leg room for people to actually sit there. So usually what ends up happening is that people don't have enough leg room for these stools sitting at this kitchen countertop. So these spaces don't really get used all that much. People want to put the 3, right? They want to put the 3, so it's kind of like, you know, because 3 is a nice number and it looks great in design. I have a video from 10,000 years ago about that exact topic. But yes, 3 stools does look beautiful and it might make sense, but really challenge yourself into thinking, how often is this actually going to be used? How often are people going to be wanting to sit at this kitchen island as opposed to sitting at a dining table? And if you have a full dining table nearby, that's most likely where people are going to want to actually sit. So really what you're having these stools for is when someone's cooking, to have a space for someone to sit at. And that fantasy isn't actually as common as you might think that it is. You know what I mean? People actually don't really want to sit there and watch you cook. It's not that interesting to watch you make risotto for 20 minutes. It's just kind of boring. So people don't sit there. And now you spent all this money and you kind of taken away the covered space and the storage opportunity you have in that kitchen island, which is 9 times out of 10 a much better, more efficient use of that space. Now you've taken it away for seating that nobody uses. So think twice before putting that in. People oftentimes regret these because they just take a look at them and go, I bought all this seating and I changed my whole kitchen island and nobody sits here. Okay, next on my list is going to be one of my favorite things to always hate on, which is not open shelf. Oh, we'll talk about open shelving. It's not on this list, but open shelving, let's just be honest. I was gonna say pot filler, because pot fillers people regret because they don't actually get used that much. I stand by this. I had a lot of people that were like, no, I love my pot filler. I love that you love it. I love that you're sitting there making your pasta, but I think pot fillers are stupid. And I think that they're stupid for a couple of reasons. First of all, I don't like that they mar the beautiful backsplash that you have. You know, if you've got this, you know, beautiful stone that you picked out your custom slab and you just threw it on that backsplash and isn't amazing, it's gorgeous, it's fabulous. And then you go and put an ugly pot filler on top. I don't know, it's just not the look. I don't really like it. I personally like to see the full slab. I don't really like the pot filler. Plus, I don't think it solves all your problems. I get that you can put it on there and you can like fill up your little pot of water for the times that you make pasta or whatever. But let's be honest, it's not that hard just to go from the sink and then slide it on over. And if you're thinking, oh Nick, but I have accessibility issues, it's really difficult for me to lift a pot of water. I go, I have great sympathy for you. I understand that. But now you've got a big full pot of water with your pot filler, but it doesn't save you from having to take that and move it on over and dump it in the sink. Do you see how it only solves half your problem, right? So it's not that useful. Plus, you're not necessarily using water every single day there. And I don't know, maybe this is just my dad talking, okay? Because my dad was like the last person to get power windows on his car. The last person, because he was like, give me one of these, because here's the thing, it's just another thing to break on your car. And I kind of get his point, and I think that's also true for pot fillers. It's not that helpful, it's kind of ugly, and it's another thing to break. There, I'm gonna channel my father. There you go. It's another thing to break in your house and another reason to call the plumber. And I'm not looking for reasons to call the plumber because they're expensive. They cost hundreds of dollars just to come out and see the place. So don't get a pot filler. People don't use them as often as they think they do, and it's another thing to break. And for that reason, people regret this purchase. Okay, next up on my list is going to be a pool. And I'm gonna also put a hot tub as well, even though I like hot tubs more than pools, I'm gonna be honest. But again, that's climate dependent. This one is like an oldie but goodie in the world of real estate and interior design and homes and whatever, this niche category that I guess I'm a part of in the social media world, which is that pools really do, like they're not great for resale because not everybody wants one. And they're a ton of maintenance. And again, kind of a theme that you'll notice here on this list, they're not used all that much, right? I think this one is something that people love when they have little kids. It's kind of like playground equipment, which you could honestly also put on this list, or any like children's fixed elements, shall I call it? You know what I mean? Things that make sense for kids, and then the kids grow up and they stop using them and then it sucks now. The trampoline, for example, right? Like it's great. I mean, that you could just sell on Facebook Marketplace or whatever and put that death trap over to the next family. But like for most people, they don't use the trampoline. They don't use the kids' playground equipment. That like, do you know what I'm talking about with the monkey bars and whatever? You know, that whole thing. My parents still have one that they inherited from somebody else when they got the house 20 something years ago. No one has even stepped into that death trap because it's probably the wood is rotten 20 years ago. Do you know what I mean? Like regret. Pool, same thing. Pool gets a little bit more use, but unlike those other items I've talked about, the kiddie sort of items, it's something that doesn't get used all that much and it's way more maintenance. Do you know what I mean? Like it is a ton of maintenance to have a pool and therefore people tend to regret them. So it's not just kind of passive structure taking up space that's really annoying and doesn't get used, but it's something that doesn't get used all that often. And And it's also something that requires a ton of maintenance and a ton of work to necessarily, like, you know, depending on where you live. This one is very dependent on where you live, okay? Like if you're in Southern California, you're probably gonna get more use out of your pool than I am here in Vancouver, okay? So that's just the truth of it. So depending on where you live, you may or may not use the pool all that much. Some places, it's almost standard practice. And if you think you're gonna use it because you're like, no, Nick, we have 10 months of warm weather where I live and we're in the pool every single weekend, then it's worth the upkeep. You know what I mean? It's worth it. But for a lot of people, it's a ton of work for something that they're not gonna spend a whole lot of time on. And then they go to sell their house, because again, life happens. And then what happens? You gotta sell it and you gotta convince the next person that they want a pool. It just limits that buying pool. Some people want a pool and they're really excited to buy it, and that's great. But a lot of people just see it and they see work. This is, by the way, especially true for like the cement in-ground pools, because those things, most people, I think, which I don't know if you're supposed to do, most people just like cover them up because they just don't want them anymore, because it's not that easy to remove this giant concrete sort of built-in pool situation. So definitely proceed with caution when it comes to a pool. Again, adjust depending on your climate, your lifestyle, your living situation, your kids, your grandkids, whatever, but definitely something to be careful of because a lot of people regret them. Okay, that's it for me for today, you guys. Thank you so much for watching this video. Honorable mention, open shelving. I just mentioned open shelving 10,000 times, but if you have it in your kitchen, people regret it because it's dusty as hell and it takes away all your storage. Okay, there you go. Honorable mention, I said it. You got it out of me, open shelving. But that's it for this video. I'll see you all in the next one. Thanks a lot so much. Okay, bye.